Hello, everyone, and welcome to Breakfast with Max. And I am very, very happy today to be here with you. And I am joined by the amazing Daniel Rodriguez from Texas,
Yes, from Texas.
Houston,
Houston, yes, we don't have a
Houston
problem.
calling. And yes, Daniel is one of my comrades in the round table, and we have a lot of fun. And so today he's here with us, and I will, with no much ado, allow him to introduce himself and tell us more about you.
Well, thank you, Max. And pardon me. It is the season for allergies. So I have been on a spiritual quest the last few years, really going into the law of attraction, spirituality, new thought, and consciousness. And I'd like to kind of talk about what led up to this point of me getting to where I am today. So, when I was a child, I remember looking up at the sky when I was about elementary school age. And I remember seeing these spirals in the sky. They looked kind of like spider webs, but kind of like recessing, kind of like a vortex, I guess you would say. Um, and I remember looking up and seeing them, but I didn't know what they were. And I didn't really talk about that to anybody. Um, I really feel like I was being activated at that time for later on in life, but I still think back to those vortexes or whatever in the sky that I used to see. I don't see them anymore. I did see them as a child. So I will start though with an experience that happened in 1996. At the time, I was 19, going on 20, first year of college. And here in the United States, there was a 7-year-old girl. You can actually look her up on Wikipedia. Her name was Jessica Dubroff, I believe. And she was going to be the youngest person to fly cross country across the United States in a single engine plane from California to somewhere on the East Coast. Okay. Obviously, not all in one day, but breaking it up into different days. But to be the youngest person to set this record. So I remember at the time this was being widely reported in the news here in America. People were really excited for this little girl. And in fact, some people were calling it the Sea to Shining Sea um, tour or whatever, because those who are American might remember that from the song America the Beautiful. So, all that to say, I remember watching this on the national news here in the United States when suddenly this voice, and it was very neutral, said in my mind, she's going to die. And it wasn't like, oh, she's a little girl, 7 years old, it's very risky, whatever. No, it was very neutral. It was very absolute. She's going to die. Sure enough, this little girl, she started off in California. The first leg took her to Wyoming, to a town called Cheyenne. And the next morning, uh, they took off. It was her father, and a flight instructor. They took off, but there were some upper atmospheric conditions. Um, and long story short, there was problems with the plane, and it crashed, and they all died. So for me, that was like a shock, you know, but then not a shock because this voice, like I said, it was this knowingness, and of course, there's multiple timelines, but somehow I hooked into the same one where she did in fact crash, and that voice was very certain of that. So that was kind of, I would say, my first kind of psychic experience, if you will. Um, so fast forwarding, the year after that, 1997, I was brought up as Roman Catholic. I made a conscious decision, and I see Max rolling his eyes. I made a conscious
Me
decision to,
too.
oh, yeah, right, recovering Catholic. So, but if I could just say this real quick, I have been really struggling because I am gay, and obviously the church, even to this day, is not very condoning of gays. Oh, we love you, but no, you can't be gay and you can't marry. But in 1997, the then Pope made a declaration that like divorced Catholics could remarry, but they had to live as brother and sister and not have sexual relations or something crazy. And I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. Peace out. All of you Roman Catholics around the world, you can have it. Okay, so for 20 years past that point, I just called myself an agnostic. I just really didn't really know where I fit in. I had people that say, "Oh, well, why don't you join this other denomination church because they accept gay people?" And I said, "No, I didn't feel called to it. I did not feel called to be a Christian. I didn't feel called to be any particular religion." And my perception at that point was that every religion has a piece of the truth, but there's a greater truth. And so that's kind of where I was for about 20 years. So then a few years ago, a friend of mine who studies astrology and knows some different things about spiritualism invited me to participate in this summer workshop that was for like 6 weeks. We would meet it on a Saturday at the teacher's house, and it was all about consciousness and about the map of consciousness with David R. Hawkins. Some people may be aware of that. And that was kind of my baseline for starting to study spirituality. And then a couple of years later, so let me backtrack a step. I have been with my husband for 6 years. We've been married for a couple of years, but I met him back in 2015. And when I started living with my husband, he liked to listen to this music station. I'm going somewhere with this called Soundscapes. And it has like piano music, new age music, mantra music. And there was this mantra artist named Sanatan Kaur that those who practice yoga may be familiar with, very popular in yoga music. And then I got very, very interested in this mantra music. And then there was another artist named, she went by the name of Sirgun Kaur. And so I started following her. And then she started mentioning it in her public page about Joshua. I say, well, what's this Joshua? And Joshua is actually a collective channeled by Gary Temple Bodley that has been referenced in other interviews, Isabel and by Nikki, right? So prior to this, I didn't know about channeling. I had heard about Abraham because I used to work at a bookstore, and I remember having those books in my hands as I was putting them on the shelf and seeing like "Ask It and It Is Given," I think is the title of one. But I didn't really like open the book to, and I didn't know what Abraham was referencing. I thought, okay, Abraham, already, that's going back to Judaism. And so, but I didn't know about channeling. And then suddenly I found out about channeling, and I decided to take this boot camp with Gary Temple Bodley. But before then, I started listening to these podcasts where they would have Joshua with the channeling, and I was just fascinated. It went so fast, or I perceived it at that time, and the information was nothing like I really heard. The perspective was nothing like I heard. So that really fueled in me this passion also for channeling. Okay, and then so I met Isabel from our roundtable, became friends with her, and then in December of 2019, she regressed me. She, as some of you might know, is a QHHT practitioner. And I did not get a past life that came through. However, it did activate me for channeling. And I started channeling in written form, but she asked during the regression if my guides would give a name. And they would not give a name at that time. Soon we will give a name, but not right now. Well, about a week later, I think it was, or it might have even been the next day. I don't remember, but I was in the shower, I was taking a shower. It was a Saturday morning. I didn't have to rush to go anywhere. And I woke up very peaceful and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a shower and I'm going to start my day. Well, as I was taking a shower, all of a sudden I heard it in my head, we are the Oracle. And I went, that's the name of my guides, the Oracle. And I got very excited and I told Isabel, but then I got scared because this name, the Oracle. So I've never watched the Matrix movies, but I know there's a character or an entity called the Oracle,
Yes.
right? And then there's obviously the Oracle at, well, some people call it Delphi, but supposedly the proper pronunciation is Delphi. And so I thought, okay, people are going to think this is very strange, this Oracle. So I kind of had to push past fear, but then I started channeling the Oracle. And that kind of was really where I took off, and I still channel in written form today. But it really opened up, like Isabel would say, my psychic door for channeling and for this information coming through, and just me being more in tune with the intuitive and psychic part of myself. So,
Wow, great. Um, it's interesting. I had, as a child, I had some kind of experience similar, not similar, but similar in the sense that it was kind of a activation or a memory that was standing there. I had a being appearing in my room. I was 4 year old, and then right over the years after that, you know that it happened, but you're not focusing on it because it's simply right for you. It's real. You know that if you go and talk about that with someone else, they may just laugh at you and say, well,
right,
you may need a medical institution maybe or
right.
something like that, but you know that it happened and you know that that is real up until the moment where it is not just real. You realize that there is more behind that, and that that was not just a dream or a some right ghost or
Yeah.
a vision, or that was there for you to activate you, or to have that thing that pushes you in the direction of this path of spiritual work, or awakening, or ascension, or right.
And even for me, for when I heard that voice that said, we are the Oracle, I had not thought about the Oracle or anything related to an Oracle, like in the days or weeks prior to that. So it really makes me believe that that truly is the name that I attracted for my guides. Of course, we understand that in the non-physical, there is no separation. However, they do group themselves together for us. Um, and that really is to me such a loving thing that they do that, and then they give themselves a name so that we can have that entity or presence to then tap into our psychic ability and channeling. But another thing too is I had read a while back the part of your website that talked about sort of like your experiences, and you had some very spiritual experiences, if I'm not mistaken, in Cambodia. Is that correct, Max? Yes. So I had, even prior to all this, like the Oracle and all that, my first partner, he's Sicilian and was working in the United States. And I visited Sicily twice, and I've been to the Greek temples in Sicily. And I remember there was this one up called Solunto or Solunto. There's even a disagreement among Sicilians how it's pronounced. But it's really not much of the temple or whatever left. It's like a corner of the temple, and then it's like one column that's kind of off to the side. And I remember feeling such an energy that when we were walking away from it, I just felt the need to, hold out my hand to connect to the energy. So I've had those kind of energetic interactions in these kind of holy places, sacred sites, these places of antiquity. And to me, of course, it all relates now that I attracted the name the Oracle, so that antiquity is also what fascinates me as well.
Yeah. uh, uh, it's amazing because, yeah, absolutely right. I remember as a child being fascinated by the Greek mythology, by the Egyptian mythology, and then right, and then you have all of these things where you try to discover or learn things, and it attracts you. It's like visiting a country. You are attracted by one country, and you are absolutely not attracted by another country. uh, and right, these things, it's right, goes beyond any consciousness. Is just that it's there, you feel it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I really I believe that I have lived many lives in the Mediterranean. In fact, I've told this also to Isabel that I have had since I was a teenager kind of a small awareness of a past life where I was in ancient Egypt, um, studying to be a priest, but didn't quite make it that far and died at a young age. Um, and Also too, and it's funny how things are placed in your path that give you these validations, although we should not seek out validation per se. But um, so I was in North Carolina once visiting a friend, and then I met this other guy who was also visiting North Carolina at the same time. And I don't, we were sitting around talking one day outside and having coffee, really nice day. And I felt um, kind of like this courage to tell this guy as we were talking together that I have this memory of ancient Egypt. And he said, "Oh, I was there too, but we don't talk about that." Because he was a African American guy who was a gospel or is a gospel singer, and grew up in the church and all that. So it's very taboo to talk about past lives or whatever, because that's not in alignment with Christianity. But yes, but he did acknowledge that. So it's kind of fascinating how all these what they call the breadcrumbs are placed in your path. Um, but you attract that the more that you suspend your disbelief. That's really the Oracle talks about that a lot. The suspension of disbelief. Um, and the more disbelief you suspend, the more that you ascend into a higher dimension or grow in your awareness. So, um, and actually, if I can also say this too, Max, I'm very encouraged. I know people look at what's going on in the world today over the past couple of years and Trump and all that, but I see, I wouldn't even say it gives me hope because, I'm actually going to channel about hope um, in a couple of days. But for me, it's very interesting. For example, that here in the United States, we had a openly gay man who was a candidate for the Democratic primary for the elections, and that he won the Iowa caucus. Now, Iowa, like this state where they're all like corn farmers, and he won the caucus there. And so you think rural America, people that grew up in a very traditional environment, but there was something about Pete Buttigieg, the guy, that they were able to suspend their disbelief um, to vote for him. So that suspension of disbelief is really starting to open and to activate. And if we go beyond the headlines about all the doom and gloom and all that, then we can see evidence of this growing spirituality and consciousness globally, even though people may not be as aware as you and I and whoever's watching this interview. It really is a phenomenon that's occurring in our world today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's one of the things that we say a lot is you don't have to just allow what is the most that shouts the most, or that is the most right out there to blind you as of that is the main stream, or that is the main way everyone think, because it isn't. It's just that it's appearing because it is the most loud of everything. There are more people awakening, or awakening, or on a path of spirituality than we can, right, account of, because we have absolutely no idea, right? We have the idea of 8 billion people living on this earth. I haven't counted. I
Right.
don't know, right? It's good. Probably there are 8 billion beings. Probably, why not? But right, I didn't count them. And I have never heard so many people expressing themselves, so that there is variety, there is so much differences, and all the people that are expressing ways that are going in a direction that you do not hear in the mainstream media, or on TV, or right in this kind of thing. So
Yes.
absolutely amazing how that plays out.
Well, and if you think about it too, Max, so you and I both on this roundtable are with Roxanne Swinehart. You and I both discovered her through Gaia TV, and that was actually my first experience with Roxanne as well. Well, let's think about 20 30, or 30 years ago. Would there have even been a Gaia TV for us to watch? Probably not.
Yeah.
So we are here at the divine timing, right time to be part of this expansion of consciousness and ascension for humanity, for the collective. We are light workers, but I really have a deep appreciation for the ability now for us to explore these things. Also, I mean, think about YouTube. I mean, if I want to watch a channeling, a Bashar, Cryon, any of the, Abraham, whatever, it's easy for me to do that. I mean, that people from like 20 years ago, they had to go to their local metaphysical shop and kind of like a library, they had to check out the video cassettes or the CDs to listen to Abraham or some of these other channeled entities, and now we have such free access to it. So I think that again, everything is activating for our highest good, and it's just such an exciting time to be in. Although, like you said, if we turn on the TV and we see all this news of chaos in the world, but even too with that, so all of these things that Bashar talks about this, channeled by Daryl Anka, that all of the cards are being put on the table. And I know here in the United States, we have the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, about the Asian hate, and of course, well, gay people, hello, my entire life. But all of these things are happening to so that we can explore this contrast together and then release it. To have finally these conversations and to upcycle ourselves into a new realm of consciousness, because all of this stuff with this duality and this hate, it's a density that works against our ascension.
Yeah, and it's uh, amazing, right? Surprising to realize how right this movement is really there. There is a movement clearly of change, and because things have changed, right? When I remember, I mean, we are quite of the same age. So, right, I remember growing up in the 80s. This awareness was not there. These abilities, these movements, they were not there. It was still in right Reagan time. This thing of work, 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 and you just, right, you are there just to do that, and then go to church and
Yeah.
pray, right? And now you see that state of mind, that way of being is gone. The new generation, anyway, it has nothing to do with what we knew in the 80s. Not just technology, but even in the state of mind and in the way they are. They don't, right. They behave in a completely different way. And for right, looking back, looking now, you see really, oh my god. And it's not right, like we often say it was better. No, it was not better. It was different.
Oh yeah, man. The people say that here all the time, even the older generations. Oh, it used to be so much better. Um, yeah, it was so much better when we had black people that had to drink from a certain water faucet because you were scared to share the same one or whatever. But no, yeah, things have changed, and I will say I'm about to start a new job where I'm going to be working 100% remote at home. Well, this is where I'm really grateful for the pandemic, and it's like people talk about 2020 as, oh, that was such a bad year. No, I mean, you're looking at it from a duality perspective. It was a necessary transformation um, for humanity. And specifically with me starting this new job, so if it had been before the pandemic, this company didn't have people working remotely. And so I'm able to, and that was something that I really wanted, was the possibility to work remotely at home. I don't want to drive to an office anymore. I have no desire to be in a loud place with the people. So,
Yeah.
but it all worked out. Yeah, in this physical structure, right, in a cubicle, and it all worked out for my highest good. But it's also fascinating to me exactly how this pandemic is happening. And I know this is going to be very controversial for some people, but for example, last month they were reporting in India that the coronavirus is just rampant. I think in one day they had like 400,000 new cases of, and we've all seen the stories about how it's very desperation to even cremate their loved ones. But this is the download that I got about that is that in India, that part of the world is there's generations upon millennia about the karma. And we are stepping off of the karma path to go into the ascension path. Those two paths cannot go together at the same time because karma is a uh, a cycle of consequences. You do one thing in one life, and you have to like you're the villain in one life, and you become the victim in the next, and all. No, it's just going in this never-ending loop, and that's not an ascension path. So all of these people, all of these souls exiting right now in India and that part of the world is burning off the karmic path to make room for the ascension. Again, I know that that can be very controversial, and please do not misunderstand me. I'm very compassionate about those who have lost loved ones, even people here in the United States, because we have a sizable Indian American population that, they're seeing all this stuff in the news, and I'm sure it's very traumatic for them. But there is a higher purpose for all of this. I just sharing from my perspective, I have gone back and forth in my mind about being vaccinated. I haven't quite decided, but I had a very good friend of mine challenge me about it when I talked to her a few weeks ago. And the first thing she said, because have you been vaccinated? And I said, no, I'm on the fence. I don't know. And she said, well, I would think that an intelligent guy like you would be vaccinated. So there's a lot of judgment around this um, vaccination and the assumptions about people who are not yet vaccinated. But I will say this, Max. So last year was a lot of pushing past fear. There are people that didn't push past any fear, but guess what? The virus still got them. Like, for example, like there was a report about this young lady that she had not left her home in like 2 months, literally had not left in 2 months. And the first time she went out in public, she got the coronavirus and then she died from it. Well, that's a fear story. Okay. also a guy who went to this young guy who went to a quote unquote Corona COVID party, where I guess it was like, oh, I'm gonna if I'm gonna get infected anyway, let's just all get together and we're gonna infect each other. I don't know. I don't know the particulars of this story, but the guy did become COVID positive and was in the hospital and kept expressing to the nurses and doctors, I did the wrong thing. I did the wrong thing. Well, he died. Well, guess what? You were in judgment and fear about it, and holding that vibration of fear at such an intense level, you have to attract that reality where you do die, because you can't push past the fear, because pushing past the fear will keep you in this world where now we're more conscious about a pandemic. We haven't had a pandemic like this since before our lifetimes. So, but again, it's not good or bad that that person died. It was just their path, and they just in this lifetime they were not able to suspend the fear. But like you said, they're playing a role for us too, because I look at that and I go, well, what if it was me laying in the hospital bed? But I don't think I would be as judgmental, because I kind of understand the subtle energy that flows and everything, but I don't know. So it's a very interesting, I guess, topic.
But yeah, I mean, from a spiritual point of view, this 2020 is really one of the most interesting year that we have ever had. I mean, when can you find such a situation where literally the world stop moving? Everyone was staying home, and to watch the consequences, what has been manifested in reality after that experience. Suddenly, better air. You have all, much more beings freely moving in their reality outside, without all the activities and the disturbance that you can have from human activities and this kind of thing, right? And uh, uh, even now, the heat, the weather has, from previous to now, has changed. So there is a new change in the climate change, right? It's different. It's not the same as it was before. And I've noticed that this year we had a much more snow in the Alps, for instance.
And here in Texas, we lost our power and we're freezing in the cold.
Yeah, even now right here. So it's amazing, when you are able to witness this, and you have the awareness of, right, of seeing, of understanding, or you have the help to understand that the things are happening, that the
Right.
change is there, right, that it's, and then when you see things that way, it's obvious that you cannot see COVID as a punishment, or as something that, right, that is just, yeah, a divine judgment of whatever. And we know
Right.
what we are talking about, because we are in the side of those that are always said it's because of the gays. It's their
Oh, right.
punishment, right?
Well, they're still saying that, but I it's crazy. But see, and think about it too. So, okay, so now in 2021, some people are going back to the office to work, and people are driving more now. I have seen the traffic here in Houston, Texas, go back to how it's always been, very terrible. They can't pour enough concrete to make enough freeways to accommodate all this traffic. But anyhow, but it's not at the same level as far as like people having to work in an office anymore. Now companies are accepting that some people can work remotely and that it's okay. So this is facilitating new paradigms for humanity, at least those of us in the Western world, but also to, it's on a spiritual level, it's freedom. I feel a sense of freedom being able to work from home, for example. And so it's greater freedom or greater abundance. Some people are doing things, making money off of like having an internet presence, and they're working at home, and they're even like exploring greater freedom for themselves than I am, because they're not even working for a company, they're their own boss. And we are now in this divine time of integration of the digital, but also the spiritual coming together. One does not cancel out the other. Um, and you and I are having this conversation today. I am highly skeptical that I would have met you if it had not been for us, coming together uh, via this digital technology, because I saw you for the first time when I on Roxanne's Wednesday night calls, and you're the moderator for that. And I know for you, well, let me ask you this, because I know that you met Roxanne, and then I guess at some point she designated you as her moderator. But do you sometimes kind of like pinch yourself? In other words, like, oh, like you went from watching her channel on Gaia TV to now moderating every Wednesday night for Roxanne's class.
Um, I I don't think about that anymore. But I had, but that was way back. I had moments where I had to pinch myself in right in realizing, oh, I'm talking with one of probably the greatest, right, one of the greatest that we have right now, and wow, right, and then you get past that because you realize, yes, but I'm worth it,
Exactly.
right? because
Yeah.
because and when it was, I think we, oh wait, no, I talked about that in the interview of Roxanne. But it's that some at some moment you have to realize that you are worth, right, you that it's you. But it's true that having that thing of saying moderate it, but I don't take it as a promotion or anything, right? It's simply that I say I love doing it.
Well, and you're such a natural, because the first time that I, well, I found out about these Wednesday night classes from Isabel, but the first time when I joined it, and um, it was like you seemed like so nice and had this calm demeanor and everything, that it just really seemed like a natural fit for you. And I think that that is it. And you're right. It's not like you're superior to anyone, but it's just that part of you that is a vibrational match to that experience,
Yeah.
I would say. And so, but that's all very fascinating. But yes, I really do appreciate that these different platforms that we have, that we're able to explore ourselves, because me sitting at home, yeah, I can explore, but we're really meant to collaborate as spiritual people and beings, um, in this kind of very organic way, because we have seen, unfortunately, what happens when one person is revered above all others, and then the consequences, like we had at the beginning of last year, those who practice Kundalini yoga with, I can't even think of the man's name right now. I'm sorry, but that suddenly there was these allegations of sexual abuse by the guru, and yeah, so, and then many people who were very, practicing Kundalini yoga and living a yogic lifestyle and Sikh lifestyle, suddenly they left Kundalini yoga because of this reckoning that happened. So, but I think now it's like, I'm on this interview with you, and then next week I can collaborate with someone else on this or that. It really is this freedom again that we are exploring together, and allowing the consciousness to then flourish from there, and not establishing this hierarchy, because that's the old way. This is the new way, you know, that we're experiencing together today.
Yeah, that's the thing. Realizing, right? And I take this as our way to recognize our connections, our collective, right, connections, and being one, or right, being all together, and we cannot express it in its right way because we are not ready yet, right? Well, we are not there yet, so we use other ways. So we project cameras, computers, and then programs, and then the internet, so that we have the illusion that through those wires we are able to, right. And I see that this as, yeah, that's the manifestation of our connection, our real, right, connection, being manifested in this communication, through the Atlantic and through whatever. And it's just because if you see, if you look at how fast this is growing and evolving and changing and going in 100 years, we've gone literally from a little thing that you were holding on your ear and on your mouth to be over, and we are now just free of all of that, and we are able to just talk, right, like this, and you hear me.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that, because actually my mother, her first job in the 70s was, she was a switchboard operator in connecting the different calls. Yeah, so I can definitely appreciate that. But then think about somebody who was born in, like, I don't know, 2000, 2010, that, you know, because you and I grew up before all of this digital transformation. I
We are
mean,
old. We are.
but these, uh, so, and this is one thing that is channeled through Joshua that I like, is that every new, or, well, new old, but new person born into the world is like already like vibrationally more expanded or higher than like you and I, because they're a vibrational match to a world that has continued to transform and to evolve. And these people, like young people, they take for granted. Well, let me not use that. That sounds negative. That they have the natural expectation of all of these different platforms and ways to interact. Um, and man, I remember being a teenager. I mean, if I wanted to contact somebody in Europe, it's like through a landline telephone. And forget about the video. So,
Yeah,
yeah. And it
and
was going to cost a lot of money to make that call.
exactly, right. and
Yeah,
and and then you couldn't stay too long, and it was always right. And you never knew if you could reach them because no one had a cell phone. Now
right.
you know that, well, I have your cell phone number. Well, I'm reaching directly you. I'm not going through a landline, in a house where there are other people and someone else can answer, or you cannot be there. You have your phone with you, so I can reach directly you.
Right.
We couldn't. So sometimes when I'm watching a old, right, something that is from the 80s, 90s, and you think, oh, how could the police officer be reached in the 80s when they didn't have a cell phone? So they were,
Right.
right, reporting a crime. Oh god, you have to find a phone somewhere. Now you have the phone with you. Wow.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Um, Gosh, I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something, but yes, I really do appreciate this. But also too, I was going to actually, I got my thought back. um, and that's not to say that there wasn't spirituality going on in like the 80s, because there was the harmonic convergence back in I think 85 or 87. um, but it was kind of like you had to just know the right people, or be in the right situation. And I think that that's the wonderful thing about now, is that um, people who otherwise would not have come into a spiritual like community or something now are able to attract this to themselves. Um, and it really is the ascension, because back then it was like, again, if you just happened to be in the right place, or like if you lived in California, that's like new age heaven. Well, here in Texas, different story. But
Right.
yeah, I really do have an appreciation now for it, the mass ability to connect and to grow the consciousness. And even for me, I have a sister that is starting to awaken, and she and I have had many discussions, and she's asked me about certain questions, like she felt energy moving through her body, and what did that mean, for example, and or seeing signs, and trying to interpret the signs. And so it's like we're all activating one another. The activation doesn't just come from above. It's the expansion. And what the oracle says is that this is the time of the bridge. So people are crossing the bridge back and forth. And as light workers, we're not guiding the people like, okay, I'm gonna walk and you follow me. No, it's we are like light poles. We're just light, just to illuminate the path, but it is that person who chooses to cross the path, where we're not above them, but we're also not, again, holding their hand and taking them across the bridge. And this is really the time of um, choice, and choosing to cross the bridge. And some people are just too scared, or they're too much in the old way of thinking that they will never cross the bridge. It's okay. Everyone's playing a role.
Yeah.
And that's, as spiritual people, we get frustrated with, oh, God, I have this friend that just, I can't even begin to talk to her about spirituality or him about spirituality, because, they just have these limiting beliefs. Well, it's okay, because they're showing you what a limited belief perspective is, and that somehow strengthens you, because you're coming more into your own awareness.
Yeah, you can measure your own path. Say, oh, gosh, that was me 20, 25 years ago. That was the mindset that I was living in, because that was what I was told, what I was living every day, because that was right the reality I was experiencing. And now, wow, look at that. Whew.
Yeah, and
I
I,
prefer now.
what were you going to say, Max?
I said I prefer this path, but no, that's judgmental. But right, go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say, but I even look back at myself. So when I was growing up, in Mexico and in the Mexican American community, there's these shops that are called lleverias, and there's like they sell these herbs and stuff. It's like a Mexican version of a metaphysical store, but with these very kind of, I dare say, low vibrational things too, like this witchcraft, but not in the empowerment and enlightenment sense. Anyhow, I'm talking all over myself, but my mother would say, "Don't go anywhere near those shops," um, and because it was this big taboo. And then now, so there's a metaphysical shop that's very close to where we live. And I started going there. I didn't even know it was there, honestly. I just discovered it a couple of months ago. I had heard about it, but I thought it was in another part of Houston. But no, it's like very close, like not even 5 minutes away driving. It's very, very close. And but when I shop there, I see the people coming in, and it's all walks of life, all kinds of people. young, old, all ethnicities, everything. And so I think that we're at an age where we're releasing all of these taboos and these fears. Like, for example, um, a few months ago, I started using a pendulum. Well, before then, I was scared to touch a pendulum because I was, again, going back to my mother, stay away from that stuff, or, whatever. And I feel very comfortable to use a pendulum now, for example.
But
Um,
that's an interesting thing that you're talking about pendulum, because right, that is one of the object that is well known, right? Because you have these things that is, and everyone has seen it somehow,
yeah,
somewhere,
some way, yeah.
capacity. And that is a good example, because that's something that one will say, oh, they're moving. It's the guy or the girl moving their hands. They're doing it, and then you experiencing it, and you take it, and it start moving alone, right? And you say, oh no, that's real. The
Right,
pendulum really moves, and my hand is not moving it,
correct.
right?
And this is wonderful because it is, again, subtle energy. Okay, because that's one thing that we don't really, most human beings do not understand how subtle energy works. And those of us who kind of do, we still have to kind of push past our own limiting belief about it. And yes, exactly. There's a subtle energy and a vibration there that I don't have to do this for the pendulum to move, for example. It moves on its own. Um, and if I ask the pendulum to show me a yes, it's consistently always the same movement. For me, it's back and forth like this, or a no is a circle. So yes, there are all of those things that show us that it's really much more than us. It's really much more than being in this body. That we are truly connected at all levels energetically, in this plane, in this realm, but also connection to the other side of the veil. Definitely.
And it's such a journey to be able to explore this. And you were talking before about the message of acceptance, allowance, and of recognizing that, right, this is real. So don't deny it. Don't run away from it. It's real. It's yours. And that is such an interesting thing, because I was thinking before, when you we were talking a little bit about the 80s, and that the law of one was channeled around the beginning of the 80s, right? By Carla with Ra. And when they explain how they did it, so all the setup and all the stuff that she needed a Bible, she needed a candle, she needed the her I don't know, bed or whatever, to be in alignment with something. And then she was always saying, I'm under attack, I'm under attack, right? uh, and and you say, wow, you realize that that is absolutely not the experience that we are having. So you realize it's hers. And then you realize, well, that's also her, right? Where she's coming, where the time and everything, she needed that. That was
Right.
her way of doing it. But now you see, we're not doing it that way anymore.
Well, and I'd like to actually, I'm glad you bring this up because this is something that I was contemplating the other day. And if we go back even earlier in time, there was Edgar Casey, but Edgar Casey was like completely, they called him what, like the sleeping prophet or psychic or something. But I mean, completely like we think asleep, for all of this channeling to come in. But the 80s and 90s, I mean, and these some of these people are still channeling today from that era, like Bashar, channel Daryl Anka, Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon, etc. that was the era of the trans channeler. So I can appreciate that, again, going back to the suspension of disbelief, that to get our attention and to really have us push past it, it had to be presented as this trans channeling, you know, that the person was like, for all intents and purposes, they were not there. It was purely like the channel being. Okay. And now we fast forward in time and we have like Roxanne Swainhart, who is a conscious channeler. Uh, Roxanne is always present as the channeling is coming through. But I think that, we're going from, like you said, somebody like in order to channel, they had to have like their hand on a Bible or a candle or this or that. Whereas now, none of that is really required, but it's because we have ascended as a collective to a point to where that's no longer necessary. Um, but again, but still, there are people, even today, young people that trans channel. Okay, so here's the thing: as the Oracle would say, it's almost a spectrum. Um, but now within that spectrum, there's a lot more possibility. You don't have to be a trans channeler to channel. And there's when people who were non-trans channelers came around, and then people were kind of skeptical because they were used to the trans channeling. So we kind of have to be flexible in our mindset about these things. What is channeling? What's not channeling? Blah blah blah. Everything's channeling. It's creation. Uh, Michelangelo was a channeler. Uh, you know, uh, so yeah, it's just now we're more conscious about it.
Yeah, and I discovered that uh, in that, because everyone receives the information in a different way. There are those that hear the voices and then translate them, or those that are instant, so they don't they right. There's the I don't remember the now the words exactly, but it was a discovery for me, because right, you imagine that things have to happen in a certain way, and then no, they don't happen in a certain way. They happen the way they happen, and everyone has their own, let's say, technique or their own way of doing it, and it's. Uh, it's amazing, because that really shows you that, right, we don't need to have, right, we can just let go of our disbelief. It's happening, and that is, for me, the only thing that we need to really focus on. It's happening. Let go of that. It's real, and you are doing it. And it doesn't matter if it's just a voice in your head, or a voice in your ear, or something that moves your pen, or whatever it is.
Right. And see, like for me, when I channel in written form, I'm not an automatic writer. I don't just like the pen, like the words are automatically, well, I don't channel, like I don't, I use a computer, like, to, when I type out the channelings, but, it's not just automatically like I'm doing like this. It's more conscious for me. Uh, but again, different people, like I know, going back to Joshua, channel up by Gary Temple Bodley, Gary has channeled, I think, 4 books or so by now. And for him, it was a lot more automatic. I mean, just typing and typing and typing, and it was just all like flowing and coming through. Whereas for me, it's more conscious. Like the Oracle gives me the topic at the channeling, and then I start typing out. And uh, but I noticed that even still, the way that it comes through sometimes is not how I, as Daniel, would explain it. Because I'm very analytical and very kind of cerebral in my way of digesting information. But for the Oracle, like they use a lot of metaphors sometimes, but even still, sometimes when I think I'm finished with the channeling, I get this kind of like intuition to go back to this one part, and I'm like, okay, I'll go back there, and then like they guide me to put something else in there that strengthens the channeling. So yes, it's very much different techniques, different people, but it's for all levels of consciousness, and we're all worthy. Just because you don't trans channel and just because you don't automatically write or whatever, it's okay, because this every person who suspends the disbelief to open themselves to spirituality and consciousness and law of attraction and all of that, you're benefiting humanity. You know, and there's still a great part of the world that doesn't acknowledge it, and it's okay. As time goes on, I think we're seeing still this transformation playing out across the world.
I wanted to ask you,
Yeah,
Texas, because I'm seeing now that the appearing, popping up more and more spiritual people and channel from in Texas itself. So it's like witnessing a change in consciousness in this state that is considered conservative in many
correct.
ways, even though we know that it's not a monolithic block of conservatism. There are Austin, Houston, San Antonio, right? Uh,
Dallas Fort Worth. Yeah.
right? How do you feel it? Did
Well,
you experience it?
one thing about Texas, first of all, and this is kind of like it seems to be a contradiction, but our state capital is Austin, and Austin, I mean, for decades has been considered like a very liberal part of Texas. And in fact, the slogan for Austin is "Keep Austin Weird." But there's a lot of people moving here from California because the cost of living in California is astronomically high. It's one of the most expensive areas of the U.S. to live in. So a lot of people have come from California to Texas, and so and here in Houston, we're one of the most cosmopolitan international cities. We have here the Texas Medical Center here in Houston that has world-class hospitals. People come from all over the world, Europe, Latin America, and beyond, the Middle East also, to be treated for like cancer, et cetera, here in Houston. So I think that we have this kind of persona or myth about Texas. Is like, you automatically think about the cowboy and the conservatism, yes, but we're transforming as a society. And right now, there's a lot of contrast because our governor is appeasing these people that are afraid about the conservatism disappearing. So now we have like this uh, suppression of voter rights that just passed, or we have this very extreme restrictive abortion ban that just got enacted. But you see, it's that last residual of this kind of conservatism, like just acting up before it goes away, because that's not the direction of the world and us as humanity, even as Texans, even to go down that path anymore. Um, so yes, but I mean, things are transforming here in Texas and everywhere else, as far as like this conservatism, a very limited mindset.
That's right. That's amazing because to witness, because even just 10 years ago, it you could have said Texas was really much more. I remember maybe it was 10 years ago, the first woman presenting herself as to be elected as a governor. This blonde woman, she was there also because she had a problem. She had something with abortion or something like that
Yes, yes,
in her history, right? And just to have her in that position 10 years ago, it was so surprising, and still maybe above of above of time, no, before its time. But since then, there is a wow, a change in Texas that is astounding, because now, even in the last election, the Democrats against Republican, that there was not that much of a difference at that moment, right? Well, yeah,
Right. And this is again where the fear is coming up because the conservatives see
yeah,
that, you know, the Democrats, the way that the population of Texas, especially in the cities, how they're voting, and the trend is going more towards the liberal and not the conservative. And so now that they're making all these restrictive rules about voting because they're in fear, right? But now we actually did have a woman governor, and I know we're coming close on our time, but back in the 80s, early 90s, named Ann Richards. Um, Quite a character, right? If you ever look at her on YouTube. But she had to operate within, kind of like what I would say the good old boy system of Texas politics. And so, but now I believe we will have people coming forward that um, are brave enough to say, okay, we're transforming as a state. How can we integrate all of the people together into this new platform and this new awareness about life here in Texas? And I think that that's happening. It's weird again, Max, this contrast. I know, like in Europe, like in Hungary, this very right wing, um, what is it, president or whatever the title is over
yeah.
there in Hungary. Yeah, this is
There is a residual of this right strongholds that are emerging in this country, and
right.
but at the same moment, yeah, it's scary if you look at that in that way. But at the same moment, it's right. It's not surprising that it happens there.
Right, exactly. So, um, but it is the contrast because this has to be addressed. We will see those things rise up, like what's happening in Hungary or what's happening in the United States with all these voter suppression things. But trust and believe that the direction that we're going is not going to be stopped. In fact, it's going to keep accelerating, and I really am excited that you and I, of course, I don't know if I'm going to be alive tomorrow or next week, but that hopefully we get to witness this continued transformation in the next decade and beyond. And that with that I'm so excited that more people are channeling and doing these things and connecting to non-physical in the ways that they are.
Yeah. We are living really in a fantastic time for this. And we already have, right? Because it's not the first moment where it's so exciting, but what we are upcoming in the next few decades, it's stuff that is just right. We are at that stage, and it can't be stopped, and the voter suppression, yeah, well, yeah, you can try, but you cannot suppress global consciousness, so our consciousness. So that is still there voting. So, right, taking decisions. So, and that is one of the things that is fascinating in this movement that many states in the United States have. Let's not just say that it's only there, but it's fascinating because it's really you can see in that the desperation of this old paradigm of humanity that knows that they are disappearing, that they are losing ground, and that they cannot come back.
Well, it's also resistance, Max. If you look at it, it is resistance because a lot of, again, I mean, this will sound judgmental. A lot of these people grew up with my way is the right way, or the how my family and how my people at church that I go to, and that we are right and everyone else is wrong. Oh God, when I was Catholic, it was like, oh, the Protestants are they're
When
going,
I was Catholic.
the Protestants are not receiving the Eucharist and the body and blood of Christ. They're not going to make it to heaven, and all this bullshit. So, but that resistance is not as powerful as the integration of consciousness globally. And that really is the direction we're going in. And I'm excited to be on this ride of ascension at this time.
You reminded me of a colleague of mine that sometimes told me we were right. She saw my videos and she said, "But I'm Catholic." I said, "All right, I'm not holding that against you."
And
Keep
that's
it.
also true, Max. It's like again, Bashar, because I mean I really like the channelings of Bashar. Bashar says it's not this or that. You can be Catholic, still
Exactly.
practicing Catholic, and watch Max's videos or whatever about consciousness. You don't have to be just all in one camp.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah,
It's this, yeah, limiting belief system. It's like but when you have Buddhism and other religions and say, oh yeah, but you can't, it's no, you can take those things and put them together and it works because
yeah.
right. All right, so we come to an end of our discussion and yeah, well, time flow. It's so
Yeah.
fast, right?
Well, the more that we tap into the nonlinear, non-physical consciousness, yes, time is an illusion, very much so.
Right.
So,
uh,
it's really been my pleasure, and I will say that I'm very ecstatic that you attracted the inspiration to do these interviews, and thank you so much for inviting me again. I really am delighted to have this platform to talk.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm very happy to have this possibility to talk with you, and right, for me is also a way to know you better, and we are on the round table together, right? It's just right. These experiences are just priceless, amazing, and so thank you for coming in. Thank you for to everyone that listened, and whether you are human or not, extra dimensional, extraterrestrial, or human. Thank you so much. We know that you are watching, and we love you, and we thank you. And thank you to you,
Yeah.
Daniel,
Yes.
for being here. And up to the next time. Bye bye.